scattered abroad by means of winnowing fans. This tradition of human sacrifices offered at the tomb of Osiris is confirmed by the evidence of the monuments. In the light of the foregoing discussion, the Egyptian tradition of Busiris admits of a consistent and fairly probable explanation. Osiris, the corn spirit, was annually represented at harvest by a stranger, whose red hair made him a suitable representative of the ripe corn. This man, in his representative character, was slain on the harvest field, and mourned by the reapers, who prayed at the same time that the corn spirit might revive and return (Ma'a nerha, Maneros) with renewed vigour in the following year. Finally, the victim, or some part of him, was burnt, and the ashes scattered by winnowing fans over the fields to fertilise them. Here the choice of the victim on the ground of his resemblance to the corn which he was to represent agrees with the Mexican and African customs already described. Similarly, the woman who died in the character of the Corn Mother at the Mexican midsummer sacrifice had her face painted red and yellow in token of the colours of the corn, and she wore a pasteboard mitre surmounted by waving plumes in imitation of the tassel of the maize. On the other hand, at the festival of the goddess of the white maize, the Mexicans sacrificed lepers. The Romans sacrificed red-haired puppies in spring to avert the supposed blighting influence of the dog star, believing that the crops would thus grow ripe and ruddy. The heathen of Harran offered to the sun, moon, and planets human victims who were chosen on the ground of their supposed resemblance to the heavenly bodies to which they were sacrificed. For example, the priests, clothed in red and smeared with blood, offered a red-haired, red-cheeked man to the red planet Mars, in a temple which was painted red and draped with red hangings. These and the like cases of assimilating the victim to the god or to the natural phenomenon which he represents are based ultimately on the principle of homoeopathic or imitative magic, the notion being that the object aimed at will be most readily attained by means of a sacrifice which resembles the effect that it is designed to bring about. The story that the fragments of Osiris's body were scattered up and down the land and buried by Isis on the spots where they lay may very well be a reminiscence of a custom, like that observed by the Khonds, of dividing the human victim in pieces and burying the pieces, often at intervals of many miles from each other, in the fields. Thus, if I am right, the key to the mysteries of Osiris is furnished by the melancholy cry of the Egyptian reapers, which, down to Roman times, could be heard year after year sounding across the fields, announcing the death of the corn spirit, the rustic prototype of Osiris. Similar cries, as we have seen, were also heard on all the harvest fields of Western Asia. By the ancients they are spoken of as songs, but to judge from the analysis of the names Linus and Maneros, they probably consisted only of a few words uttered in a prolonged musical note which could be heard at a great distance. Such sonorous and long-drawn cries, raised by a number of strong voices in concert, must have had a striking effect, and could hardly fail to arrest the attention of any wayfarer who happened to be within hearing. The sounds, repeated again and again, could probably be distinguished with tolerable ease even at a distance; but to a Greek traveller in Asia or Egypt the foreign words would commonly convey no meaning, and he might take them, not unnaturally, for the name of some one, Maneros, Linus, Lityerses, Bormus, upon whom the reapers were calling. And if his journey led him through more countries than one, as Bithynia and Phrygia, or Phoenicia and Egypt, while the corn was being reaped, he would have an opportunity of comparing the various harvest cries of the different peoples. Thus we can readily understand why these harvest cries were so often noted and compared with each other by the Greeks. whereas if they had been regular songs they could not have been heard at such distances, and therefore could not have attracted the attention of so many travellers; and, moreover, even if the wayfarer were within hearing of them, he could not so easily have picked out the words. Down to recent times Devonshire reapers uttered cries of the same sort, and performed on the field a ceremony exactly analogous to that in which, if I am not mistaken, the rites of Osiris originated. The cry and the ceremony are thus described by an observer who wrote in the first half of the 19th century. After the wheat is all cut, on most farms in the north of Devon the harvest people have a custom of crying the neck. I believe that this practice is seldom omitted on any large farm in that part of the country. It is done in this way. An old man, or some one else well acquainted with the ceremonies used on the occasion, when the labourers are reaping the last field of wheat, goes round to the shocks and sheaves, and picks out a little bundle of all the best ears he can find. This bundle he ties up very neat and trim, and plats and arranges the straws very tastefully. This is called the neck of wheat or wheaten ears. After the field is cut out, and the pitcher once more circulated, the reapers, binders, and the women stand round in a circle. The person with the neck stands in the centre, grasping it with both his hands. He first stoops and holds it near the ground, and all the men forming the ring take off their hats, stooping and holding them with both hands towards the ground. They then all begin at once in a very prolonged and harmonious tone to cry "the neck," at the same time slowly raising themselves upright and elevating their arms and hats above their heads, the person with the neck also raising it on high. This is done 3 times. They then change their cry to "Wee yen! Way yen!" which they sound in the same prolonged and slow manner as before, with singular harmony and effect, 3 times. This last cry is accompanied by the same movements of the body and arms as in crying "the neck." After having thus repeated "the neck" 3 times, and "wee yen" or "way yen" as often, they all burst out into a kind of loud and joyous laugh, flinging up their hats and caps into the air, capering about, and perhaps kissing the girls. One of them then gets "the neck," and runs as hard as he can down to the farmhouse, where the dairymaid, or one of the young female domestics, stands at the door prepared with a pail of water. If he who holds "the neck" can manage to get into the house in any way unseen, or openly, by any other way than the door at which the girl stands with the pail of water, then he may lawfully kiss her; but if otherwise, he is regularly soused with the contents of the bucket. On a fine still autumn evening the crying of the neck has a wonderful effect at a distance, far finer than that of the Turkish muezzin, which Lord Byron eulogises so much, and which he says is preferable to all the bells in Christendom. I have once or twice heard upwards of 20 men cry it, and sometimes joined by an equal number of female voices. About 3 years back, on some high grounds, where our people were harvesting, I heard 6 or 7 necks cried in one night, although I know that some of them were 4 miles off. They are heard through the quiet evening air, at a considerable distance sometimes. Again, Mrs. Bray tells how, travelling in Devonshire, she saw a party of reapers standing in a circle on a rising ground, holding their sickles aloft. One in the middle held up some ears of corn tied together with flowers, and the party shouted 3 times what she writes as "Arnack, Arnack, Arnack, we haven, we haven, we haven." They went home accompanied by women and children, carrying boughs of flowers, shouting and singing. The manservant who attended Mrs. Bray said, "It was only the people making their games, as they always did, to the spirit of harvest." Here, as Miss Burn remarks, "Arnack we haven," is obviously, in the Devon dialect, a neck or knack we haven. Another account of this old custom